I'm very grateful for your presence this morning. Thank you for being here. All of us at some point, I suppose, have felt excluded or left out. It makes us feel lonely, hurt, maybe like no one cares about us, like we're not very important. Sometimes we may even feel excluded from God's blessings, or even from His attention, like He doesn't see what we may be going through. Even worse than those feelings is when we may feel ignored by God, or we feel even that God is punishing us. One of the songs we sang just a moment ago, the song previous to the one just before, was about how we fail to see the rainbow in the dark clouds. And we can do that. We can get lost in the situation that we're in and fail to see God and fail to see what He's doing. And we often fail to see the possibility of blessings that can come from tragedy and trials. One of those things that we can know intellectually, and we know the Bible teaches that, but when you're in the midst of those trials, it's so hard to keep that in front of our mind. In the book of Ruth, we read about a woman named Naomi. And Naomi felt that she had been abandoned by God. She felt that God had cursed her. She was suffering through famine and going hungry, and she had been forced to move away from the land of her home. And after that, her husband and both of her sons died. She felt stricken by God. She didn't understand how God could allow this to happen if He really cared about it. What she couldn't see was that God was setting her up for blessings beyond her own dreams or her own situation. And she would come to realize this, she would come to remember this through a young woman named Ruth. And seeing her character and seeing her commitment. Ruth's commitment to Naomi, her mother-in-law, and her commitment to God. And Ruth's commitment to her new people and her new culture. Today is Mother's Day, and we recognize those wonderful and important women in our lives that have had such a great impact, that have taught us so much, not even in an active way, but simply by watching how they live their life. And I think it would be fitting today that we look at this young woman, Ruth, this woman of impeccable character, of fearless self-sacrifice, and working hard on behalf of others, and being devoted, because that's a characteristic that we honor today with Mother's Day. So many of those women who love so selflessly and so fully. So turn with me to the book of Ruth this morning if you're not already there. In this series, we're looking at the big ideas of these books of the Bible, and the big idea of the book of Ruth is really that God's plan is to include the Gentiles in His kingdom and to bless them. And this is seen, and this comes about, and is exemplified in the example of Ruth and her commitment. The commitment that she makes to Naomi when she says, "Your God will be my God." We're going to look at her commitment today. God wants to be the God of all people, not just the nation of Israel. They had a special relationship with Him, but God cares about everyone in the world. And this story shows us His providence to all who would become His people. We see first, as we look into the book of Ruth, how God provides for His people. At the beginning, reading in verse 1 of the book of Ruth. Now it came about in the days when the judges governed that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the land of Moab with his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem and Judah. Now they entered the land of Moab and remained there. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They took for themselves Moabite women as wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years. Then Mahlon and Chilion also died, and the woman was bereft of her 2 children and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the land of Moab. For she had heard in the land of Moab that the Lord had visited his people in giving them food. So she departed from the place where she was, with her 2 daughters-in-law with her. And they went on to the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, No, but we will surely return with you to your people. But Naomi said, Return, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they would be your husbands? Return, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I said I have hope, I should even have a husband tonight, and also bear sons. Would you therefore wait until they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is harder for me than for you. But the hand of the Lord has gone forth against me. And they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Then she said, Behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything, but death parts you and me. So they made their way back to Bethlehem, back to the land of Naomi's people. Naomi's name means pleasant in the Hebrew, so she was called Pleasant before. And when they got back to Bethlehem, people said, Look, it's Naomi. She said, Don't call me Naomi anymore, because the Lord has abandoned me. She wanted to be called Mara, which means bitter. She felt that God had abandoned her. She felt that God had cursed her. But notice also, they had left Bethlehem because of a famine. And it says there that Naomi heard that the famine was over, but it says specifically that she heard that God had visited her people in giving them food. So she's already starting to see the hand of God beginning to bless them. God is already at work to reverse all the misfortunes in her life. So they get back to Bethlehem. And in chapter 2, it was at the time of the barley harvest, we're told at the end of chapter 1. In chapter 2 it says, verse 1, Now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of great wealth, of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, Please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after one in whose sight I may find favor. And she said to her, Go, my daughter. So she departed and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Now, isn't that funny? Ruth just so happened to go into the field of Boaz that day. And Boaz just so happened to be in that particular field that day. We don't know how many fields Boaz had. The indication that he was a fairly wealthy man, so likely he had other fields, but he just happened to be in that field just on the same day that Ruth also just so happened to be there. I'm being facetious here. Of course, God is at work in this. God's hand is seen here. And it will be even more seen. So she goes and gleans in the field. What would happen is they would go in and they would take the scythe and cut down the barley, the stalks, like the wheat in the wheat field. They would chop that down, they would bundle it up into sheaves, and then they would stack them up. And there would be some areas where some would fall to the ground. There would be some in the corners that they didn't quite get to. And that's where the poor would go and try to get grain from there. And that's what Ruth was going to do. Well, they see Ruth there. In verse 5 of chapter 2, Then Boaz said to his servants who was in charge of the reapers, Whose young woman is this? The servant in charge of the reapers replied, She is the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the land of Moab. And she said, please let me glean and gather among the reapers, after the reapers among the sheaves. Thus she came and has remained from morning until now. She has been sitting in the house for a little while. Then Boaz said to Ruth, listen carefully, my daughter. Do not go glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go on from this one, but stay here with my maids. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Indeed, I have commanded the servants not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars and drink from what the servants draw. She fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? Boaz replied to her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother in the land of your birth, and came to a people that you did not previously know. May the Lord reward your work, and your wages be full from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge. Wasn't that just what she said? She told Naomi she was going to go glean in the field, and she said, let me find favor in the eyes of someone. Well, she found favor in the eyes of Boaz. God put Boaz in her path. So then she goes back after us, and she comes back, and she's got this grain with her, and Naomi says, essentially, how did it go? And she said, let me tell you how it went. She gleaned in the field until evening, in verse 17. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, which was about an ephah of barley. She took it up and went to the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also took it out and gave Naomi what she had left after she was satisfied. Her mother-in-law then said to her, where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed. So she told her mother-in-law, with whom she had worked, and said, the name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz. You can almost hear Naomi's jaw drop, because she realizes this is a relative of ours. Again, everything just so happening according to these events. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and the dead. Again, Naomi said to her, this man is our relative. He is one of our closest relatives. Then Ruth the Moabitess said, furthermore, he said to me, you shall stay close to my servants until they have finished all my harvest. Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with his maids, so that others do not fall upon you in another field. So she stayed close by the maids of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. And she lived with her mother-in-law. So Naomi is beginning to recognize this is not all just happenstance, because she gives God the credit. She says God has blessed, has visited kindness in placing you in Boaz's field. So her spiritual fog is starting to dissipate a little bit. She's starting to get a little bit of her faith back. She sees that God is helping. And she knows, and the reason that God is helping in this situation is because he knows all about it. He knows the hearts of all those who are involved. So God is blessing his people, but he's also pointing out some things to everyone involved here. God is recognizing the character of the people involved here. First of all, Ruth. God sees Ruth's character. God knows all. He knows Ruth's heart. He knows what kind of woman she is. And we see that she refused to leave Naomi, her mother-in-law. Now think about this. Ruth has lost her husband as well. She is grieving. She is in the depths of despair. And she has the opportunity to go back to her family. But she stays with Naomi. She doesn't leave her mother-in-law to grieve alone and to be alone. We see that she is even willing to convert her religion. The Moabites did not worship Jehovah. They worshipped other gods, likely how she was raised, how she grew up worshiping these other gods, and that's why Naomi says, go back to your family and go worship your family's gods. And Ruth says, no, I can't do this. I'm not going to leave you. She said, where you go, I'll go. Your people will become my people, and your God will become my God. It would have taken a great deal for her to push all of that past behind her and leave that growing up in that kind of culture, worshiping these other gods. It would have been maybe something that would have given her some comfort to go back to something a little familiar, maybe. But she didn't choose to do that. We see that Ruth is a truth seeker. She's seeking after the truth. She's seeking after God. And we know that all who seek after God will find Him. But Ruth is willing to give up everything that is familiar to her in order to support Naomi. She is a woman of great character. In chapter 2 and verse 2, Naomi didn't ask her to go into the fields. Ruth volunteers. She said, we need food. Naomi's in no shape to take care of us, and she goes, I will go. I will go into the fields. She goes into the fields, and that's hard work. Hard work. Not only is it hard work, but she's placing herself in danger. A young woman alone, out in the fields with the ranch hands, bad things can happen. And not only that, but Boaz's servants, even the women's servants, they may run her off too, and they say, no, you're going to leave. Just get out of here. You don't work with us. We don't know who you are. Just leave. But God is providing her these opportunities. The servants tell Boaz, they say, oh yeah, this woman here, she got here early in the morning. She's worked all day, and she worked clear into the evening before she went home. Ruth is putting in a day's work here, working hard on behalf of her and to care for Naomi. God isn't the only one who notices Ruth's hard work and her character. Boaz recognized it as well. He talks to Ruth again. He talks to her, and he commends her. He said, I've heard all about how you're taking care of Naomi, his relative, his family. He said, I see how you are working hard to take care of her. Boaz then commands his servants to, he says, you watch out for this woman. You let her do what she needs to do, and you watch out for her. You protect her. He says, don't go just out there in the field. Stay with my maids, with this other group of women, and you can work with them, kind of protect each other. Then in chapter 3, after this goes on, she goes throughout the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. So she's working at a good period of time here. Boaz is seeing the character of this woman, her integrity, her devotion, and he's impressed. So it's no surprise when Naomi talks to Ruth and says, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do. You need to go to Boaz, and you need to let him know that you are available. She is a widow. There is something in the Jewish law called the Levirate marriage, where if a man dies without having a son, an heir, then his brother was to take that widow and give her a child so that family line might carry on. It seems very bizarre to us. I understand it's a very different culture, a different time, but that was the law of the time. So Naomi's encouraging her to pursue this. She says, go and talk to Boaz and let him know that you are available, that you are interested. In the way that she did this was, she said, she went and found Boaz after he was tired out from a day's work. When he would fall asleep, she said, just lay down by his feet and lift his robe off of his feet. Again, this sounds really weird, but that's what they did. This was a signal in that culture that she was interested, that she was available. Boaz sees this. He wakes up, he sees Ruth down there, and he says, I've seen what kind of woman you are. And he knows what is being asked here. And he's all for it. But he says there's a problem. See, there's a law with the kinsman redeemer. And he said there's actually a relative who is more closely related to you than I. If Boaz is a second cousin, he said we've got a first cousin that needs to have the opportunity according to the law. This all had to be done very properly. So he says, I'll get working on this. He gives her some more grain to take back, some more food, and she goes back home, and he says, well, I'll get on this tomorrow. We also see the character of Boaz throughout all of this as well. He is a remarkable man, because he shows his character in the fact that he is not hesitant at all to marry a foreigner. This was not something usually done in Israel. It was very uncommon. I wouldn't say scandalous, but certainly raised some eyebrows. But he doesn't hesitate with this. She is a Gentile. She is an outsider. Even though she has committed to taking care of Naomi, even though she's committed to living with her and all of that, she still is an outsider. But Boaz is not going to let that stop him. Part of this could be because of Boaz's history as well. It's not immediately understood from the text. We've got to do a little putting some items together, but Boaz's mother is a woman named Rahab. Yes, that Rahab. First name Rahab, last name the harlot. That was his mother. She was the one who helped the spies when the Israelites came in and conquered Jericho. And she let her family were spared from the slaughter. They were saved, and Boaz and Rahab marries one of the spies. That is Boaz's father. So Boaz got to grow up seeing his own mother, a Gentile, a harlot, welcomed into the people of Israel, welcomed in as a child of Abraham. And he wants to do that for Ruth. So he's not worried about this situation, however some may look at it. We even see down in chapter 4, as the children start to be born here, there's a woman named Tamar who is mentioned in chapter 4 and verse 12. Tamar is a woman with a very sordid history in the Scriptures. She was also a Canaanite, also an outsider. And yet, Tamar and Rahab and Ruth all appear in the lineage, in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Well, Boaz and Ruth make a perfect pair, and this is obvious to everyone. And everyone sees God's hand in blessing this family. When we look in chapter 4, after Boaz goes through the procedure of talking with the relative, and he says, you know, that Naomi's come back to Israel, and she's got the land of her husband. She needs to sell it. You have the opportunity to buy it. He says, yeah, I'll buy that land. And he said, well, hold on. If you buy that land, you've also got to take your duties according to the law with Ruth the Moabitess and raise up an heir to her. And he goes, ooh, well, hold on now. That's going to affect my own inheritance. There will be something involved with his inheritance, perhaps his marriage. And he says, don't want to open that can of worms. So he says, I will give up my right to that if you want to take it. And Boaz says, I will take it. He agrees to buy the land, to redeem it, and he agrees to marry Ruth according to the customs of the law. Well, this just works out great for everyone. In verse 11 of chapter 4, it says, all the people who were in the court and the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built the house of Israel, that you may achieve wealth in Ephrathah and become famous in Bethlehem. Moreover, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, through the offspring which the Lord will give you by this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Then the woman said to Naomi, blessed is the Lord who has not left you without a redeemer today, and may his name become famous in Israel. May he also be to you a restorer of life and a sustainer of your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons has given birth to him. We know in the past that God has, at times, for various reasons, closed the wombs of some women and not allowed them to conceive. So the crowd here that is gathered is praying that God will open her womb and bless them with children. He has done that before, and they want him to do that again. Now consider something. Remember, way back in chapter 1, Naomi and Elimelech and Orpah and Ruth and Mahlon and Chilion, they all lived in Moab. And it says that they were there for 10 years. So in 10 years, Ruth didn't have a child. For 10 years, God had closed her womb, in a sense. The scriptures don't specifically say that, but there was no child there. She was unable to conceive for 10 years. If she had been able to conceive, if she had been able to give birth to children, then there would be heirs, and there would be no reason for Boaz to fulfill his duty under the Levirate law. So this all had to be orchestrated exactly the way that it did, exactly the way that it came out. Boaz is called a redeemer here, the kinsman redeemer. And he is in a sense, but through him will come the ultimate redeemer, Jesus Christ. Remember also that Elimelech, Naomi's husband, where was he from originally? He was from Bethlehem. Does that ring any bells? Bethlehem, where the Savior would be born. They had left Bethlehem during a time of famine. But God allowed trials to come into their life that were eventually going to drive them back to Bethlehem. So God is working in all of this, setting up redemption not just for the family of Elimelech, not just for Ruth and Naomi, not just for Boaz, but he's setting up redemption for all people who would be redeemed through Christ. And he is continuing that line of promise that began all the way back with Abraham, back in Genesis 22 and verse 18, where God told Abraham, through your seed, all the nations of the world shall be blessed. We understand that promise to mean through Christ. This is God fulfilling that promise. It's another step in that chain. In verse 15, the people had said to Naomi that he would be that this child would be a restorer and a sustainer of Naomi in her old age, and that Ruth was a blessing to her that was better than 7 sons. Well, Naomi is being blessed, but all of humanity also will be blessed even more through all these struggles, as difficult as they were. The crowd was essentially saying, even if your husband had lived, and even if your sons had lived, you wouldn't be nearly as blessed as the way God has brought this about. It was difficult at the time, but it has brought about hope and blessing for so many. And that's where we fail to see the rainbow in the dark skies sometimes, as we sang earlier. We encounter these struggles in life, and we grow through them. Again, this is something that we know intellectually. We know that we are supposed to count it all joy when we encounter various trials. We know we're supposed to do that, but it's so hard to actually live that out. It's so hard to really believe that and to feel that. But we do grow through struggles. Just like a weightlifter. If you constantly lift the 2-pound dumbbells, you might be fit, but you're not going to really get stronger. You've got to add more weight. You've got to add more resistance. You've got to add more pain. And that's what comes through trials. In these trials that come, we learn to do hard things. We learn to persevere. And above all, we learn to trust God in every circumstance. At least we should be learning to trust God. And we learn also to maintain our character and our integrity when we face difficult times. In the book of Ruth, we see once again how God turns a tragic situation into a victory that just completely overshadows the suffering that came before. Much like the story of Job, all that he suffered, as terrible as that was, as tragic and heartbreaking as that was, at the end of Job, we learn that God blessed him twice over what he had lost. Naomi and Ruth are blessed for their commitment to each other and their commitment to God. The greatest king of Israel, King David, would soon be born from this beautiful love story that we read about this morning. Ultimately, the Redeemer and Savior of all mankind would be born from this family. Hollywood can't compete with the true stories that we find in the Bible. But this isn't just a story that we read about. This is a story that you can take part in as well. You have a place in this story. If you, like Ruth, will make God your God, if you will follow where he leads, then he will make you one of his people, child of God. He longs to bring all of the people of the world home to be with him in eternity, in heaven, where there will be no death, there will be no sadness, there will be no loss or grieving, there will be no tears. He desires that for each one of His children. So I would urge you today, make your commitment to Him. And He will make a commitment to you that will last forever and ever and ever. If you want to make that commitment today, or if you want to renew that commitment, or if you want to know more about how to do that, then make that need known to us. Let us help you in that journey as we stand and sing. Please come.
There's a fountain free, 'tis for you and me. Let us haste the ways to its brink. 'Tis the fountain.